What is up, guys? Unfortunately, we do not have a UFC fight night to cover this upcoming weekend, but that does not mean we do not have a lot to talk about. We got McGregor possibly return. We got Kevin Holland's short lived retirement. We got a quadrilogy booked. Guys, stay tuned.
That is a
Which is fun, but you got to be ready for that.
but it's not
And welcome back to another episode of Fist First. As always, I'm your host, Steve, and we are streaming here on DSM Media's YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Guys, please don't forget to hit that subscribe, like, or follow button. It would help us out tremendously. And due to a lack of Wi-Fi connection, I get a little change of scenery here, moving on down to my kitchen area. So to start off, as always, we have a little bit of UFC news around the octagon. And like I said in that little bit, in that little intro, sorry, I cannot speak tonight. Conor McGregor teases a move to welterweight, potentially coming back here to the UFC. Now, for those of you avid UFC fans, you Conor McGregor fans, obviously we know that Conor McGregor spent a majority of his time in the featherweight and that lightweight division, where he eventually became the champ of both of those divisions. So potentially moving back into the welterweight, where he does have 3 fights. He is 2-1 in welterweight. He has that one win over Nate Diaz, another win against Donald Cerrone, and his one loss also coming to Nate Diaz. But welterweight is not a division that he has got the crown for yet. He was not the welterweight champion at one point. So, McGregor returning to welterweight, potentially looking to become a champion in a different division. Very, very interesting. Very interesting return for Conor McGregor. But I was sitting there and I was looking at the rankings in the welterweight division, and I'm trying to think what fight really makes sense for him. Who in that top 15 makes sense to him? Because he's going to get a top guy. He's not going to get a shot right for the belt, but he's going to get a top guy. And as I'm sitting there, I'm looking at the rankings. To be honest, not a lot of names really made sense to me. The only name who's not even in the top 10, just in the top 15, the only name that really made sense to me is Jorge Masvidal. Because you got to think, McGregor's not going to come in and fight an up-and-comer. It's not going to happen. He's going to come in and he's going to fight a vet. He's going to fight an older guy. Somebody like Stephen Thompson kind of got brought out, but he, obviously he has a fight scheduled coming in December, which we're actually going to touch on next. So to be honest, I think Masvidal is the only name there that really makes sense to me. And I do think that's a fight that, UFC fans would appreciate. I think that is a fight to make. Masvidal is sitting at number 11 in the welterweight rankings. So it's not necessarily a gimme fight, but if Conor McGregor does win that, he will probably most likely be ranked in that welterweight division. So keep an eye on Conor McGregor's return. It is most likely imminent, maybe next year, probably next year. And I mentioned Stephen Thompson in that division there. So Kevin Holland comes out and says he's retired after that Chimaev fight. I don't think a lot of people really bought into it. I think it was just a little bit of exposure, maybe a little bit of media attention. He didn't retire. Let's be real. He never had the intent of retiring after that loss to Chimaev. So Kevin Holland booked December 10th, taking on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. That is going to be the main event of that UFC fight night on December 10th. Very, very good, interesting fight. When that time comes around, I will cover it in more detail, but definitely a fun fight to look forward to. And speaking of fun fights to look forward to, we have a quadrilogy booked in January in Brazil. Brandon Moreno taking on Davison Figueiredo for the fourth time. And that quadrilogy, that's a real word. I actually had to look that up because I was sitting here typing in my notes and I was like, this is the fourth time that they're fighting. We have a trilogy. It has to be called a quadrilogy, right? And it is. That is a real quadrilogy is a real term. Anyway, Brandon Moreno taking on Davison Figueiredo for the fourth time, January 21st in Brazil. For those of you who don't know, this series sits at 1-1-1. Very, very interesting quadrilogy. Nobody has the upper hand. It's even. It's the fourth fight, but it's even. In this, in the records there, it's not 2-1. Somebody's not down 1-2. There's that one contest lingering there, so that series against them too sits at 1-1-1. Very, very fun fight to look forward to, and like I said before, as January rolls around, I will be covering that fight in much more detail. But do not forget about that fight and look forward to it. That's going to be an exciting card on January 21st in Brazil. So like I said, unfortunately for UFC fans, there is no fight night this weekend, this Saturday. So as I was, going through some ideas, trying to figure out what to do this show, I thought that I'd introduce you guys a little bit to me as a UFC fan. So what I want to do is I want to go by the weight class, just give you guys who my favorite fighter is in the weight class, some things about that fighter. And I will say all these people that I'm going to mention are ranked. I do have a lot of favorite fighters that are not ranked, but for the sake of new fans, people that are getting into the UFC, I want to stick with names that you're going to hear. Names that are that are relevant right now. So we'll start here in the women's strawweight division. Not only is this the lowest weight division, that's why I'm starting, but also one of my favorite fighters overall is in this weight class. Again, that's women's strawweight. Rose Namajunas. Now, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me here. For some reason, I don't really know why. For some reason, a lot of people just don't like Rose. I don't get it. Maybe it's the fact that, she's a champion. She became a champion and then she's not a champion. And then she is a champion and she's not a champion. It's that continuity, that spiral of being a champ, not being a champ, not being able to retain a championship. Maybe that's a reason why people, discredit her or doubt her. But if you take a look at the women's strawweight division, that championship belt recently, for at least, has been floating around between a couple fighters. Like, nobody in that weight class is able to hold that belt. So I don't really understand where a lot of the Rose Namajunas hate's coming from, but it is what it is. She is my favorite fighter in that division. And for those of you who did not witness this, this was the second time that she won the title. I want to show you guys one of my favorite Rose Namajunas knockouts here. And this took place in early 2021. She fought Weili Zhang for the belt. And when I tell you this knockout, I was sitting there watching this. I think this was in April of 2021. I was sitting there watching this, and when this knockout happened, I screamed. I jumped out of my seat. It was almost like the Eagles winning a Super Bowl. Guys, check this out.
And Weili has landed several of those inside low kicks.
Early head kick! The Rose has regained the strawweight crown with the belt. As many style points as you could produce. Wow!
Oh my goodness! Out of nowhere.
Oh, she's falling.
She's saying no, but
She's mad, but she still can't even stand.
What a knockout, guys. That one of my favorite knockouts of all time. That's something reminiscent, something similar to that Leon Edwards knockout over Kamaru Usman. A lot of people had counted out Namajunas for that fight, and to get that head kick knockout, to get the championship belt, what an incredible moment. And you guys didn't see it, but towards the end, it would have been a little bit long for me to play, but towards the end of that video, you really see her emotion. You really see that she puts in this work, and all that hard work pays off by her winning the championship belt. I love, love, love to see that in fighters that give it their all and get rewarded for it. Guys, you are rewarded for hard work. And that video, watching the UFC in general, you really see that you are rewarded for that hard work that you put in. But enough on Rose Namajunas. I'm going to move here to the women's flyweight division. And my favorite fighter here is none other than the champ, Valentina the Bullet Shevchenko. Guys, what a fun fighter to watch. Shevchenko debuted in 2015. And before I really talk about that, this card that she debuted in 2015 is an unbelievable card. I just want to list some of the fighters that also fought, on this 2015 card that Shevchenko debuted on. So Francis Ngannou, who's currently the UFC heavyweight champion, was the very first fight on the preliminary card in this 2015 debut for Valentina Shevchenko. Francis Ngannou was the first fight on that card. That shows you how long ago it's been since 2015. Because you think, all right, 2015, that's not too long ago. That's 7 years ago. That is long ago. Francis Ngannou was sitting here at fight number 1. He's now the UFC heavyweight champion of the world. Not only that, Kamaru Usman took on Leon Edwards, their first fight here in this 2015 card that Shevchenko debuted on. Obviously, Usman was the pound-for-pound king, was the welterweight champion, is not now. Lost the belt to Edwards. Some other notable names here on that stacked 2015 card: Vicente Luque, Charles Oliveira, Nate Diaz, Rafael Dos Anjos, Cowboy Cerrone. What a stacked UFC card for Valentina Shevchenko to debut on. And, the reason I bring up these names is because it's kind of like a storybook, Valentina Shevchenko debuts on this card and then absolutely takes the UFC by storm and becomes your champion of the women's flyweight division. But that's not to say she didn't have her fair share of competition on her way up to becoming a championship, or to becoming a champion. Her first 5 UFC fights did take place in the bantamweight division. Her bantamweight run was stalled by Amanda Nunes. She fought Nunes twice. She lost both times. But Valentina Shevchenko moves down the flyweight, finds her home in that division, wins the belt in 2018, hasn't lost the belt since. She is currently your champion of the women's flyweight division. Guys, keep an eye on her. That is a name that you are definitely going to hear a lot of. Women's bantamweight. This is a tough one for me because I'm not going to lie, not a lot of fighters that I like in this women's bantamweight division. So simply due to the lack of competition in this division, my favorite fighter in here has to go to no other than the Lioness, Amanda Nunes. She's a double champ right now, not only of this women's bantamweight division, but of the women's featherweight division. Amanda Nunes, the greatest female fighter of all time. Amanda Nunes, the girl that retired Ronda Rousey. And I actually do want to show you guys this video too, because for those of you who don't know, Ronda Rousey was a very, very dominant fighter, dominant female fighter in the UFC. And Amanda Nunes retires Ronda Rousey. So after this fight here, not only does she retire her, she knocks her out in 48 seconds. In 48 seconds, Amanda Nunes knocks out probably the greatest female fighter of that time. It's almost like a passing of the torch here. Guys, check this out. Ronda Rousey's in blue. Amanda Nunes is in black.
Challenger in the blue. Nunes utilizing that reach early, mixing things
Oh,
up.
she tagged her. She tagged
And
her again.
again.
She hurt her. Nunes with a big right hand, Mike. And again, she hurt her again. Ronda's in trouble.
Nunes
She's in trouble, Mike.
over the top.
Big trouble.
Can she finish it right here, right now?
She shot her to the body. Ronda is in big
Huge
trouble,
jab.
Mike. Nunes' hands are down, and she's walking Ronda down. She tagged her again.
Over and over. Amanda Nunes. Big
She's
combination.
That's it.
Boom.
It's it.
And
It's over.
all over. Just like that.
What?
Amanda Nunes, like I said, passing up the torch there. Ronda Rousey was the greatest of that time. Passes the torch over to Amanda Nunes, who is now the greatest female fighter of all time. So she has to be my favorite fighter in that women's bantamweight division. Now, like I said, she is the champion of the women's featherweight division. There's currently no rankings, no official UFC rankings for the female featherweight division. So, my favorite fighter there has to also go to Amanda Nunes. So I'm not even going to cover the women's featherweight division. And instead here, I am going to move on to the men's weight class. We're going to go men's flyweight first. We're going to start at the bottom. And I think this is another one where a lot of people might disagree with me. Brandon Moreno, my favorite fighter here in the flyweight division. Brandon Moreno. There's so much to like about him, yet people still tend to hate, right? A lot of people call him Brandon Morano. I think it's his fighting style. He does have a very funky stance when he fights. But Brandon Moreno, he is currently your flyweight interim champion. Like I said before, he's taking part in that quadrilogy fight against Deiveson Figueiredo. So he is the interim champion. He's fighting Figueiredo to become the real champion of that flyweight division. Again, that fight is scheduled in January. I cannot wait for that card. Brandon Moreno debuts in 2016 as an underdog and gets a submission against one of the UFC's top guys at the time in Louis Smolka. Brandon Moreno came into that fight at a plus 325 odds, defies the odds, gets it done. Not only that, Brandon Moreno starts out 3-0 in the UFC. And guys, he became the first Mexican-born UFC champion in 2021. Guys, I'm going to show you a video of this because this was an incredible, incredible moment for UFC fans, for Brandon Moreno, for Mexican fans. This was an absolutely wonderful moment for Brandon Moreno. And this was in none other than one of those fights with Deiveson Figueiredo. Here we go.
He's standing sideways and loading up his hips again. Oh, look at
Right
this.
hand, takedown.
Brandon Moreno gets him down.
He's a little
He
high.
gets the back. He's got
both
the
hooks.
hooks. Oh, my goodness. He's
Body
got both
triangle
hooks
as
in.
well.
He's got the body triangle.
And that's, again, Joe, just going to wear on that gas tank of Deiveson Figueiredo.
And he's got one arm in play. Oh, my goodness. He is under the chin.
Figueiredo wincing here.
Figueiredo has that hand defending,
He does not like this.
but this is a bad situation. That arm is underneath the chin.
There he goes.
He goes
He got
grip
that
to
one
grip,
free.
but he goes palm to
Palm
palm.
to palm. Yeah, he should.
No denying the heart of the champion. 3 minutes now to go round 3.
Oh, look at this.
Punches here.
Moreno with good shots here. Good power behind those. And there's a lot of time to go here. A lot of time. This is not ideal in terms of the placement of the triangle. He'd like it on top
Yes.
because he's putting pressure on his elbow. Look at this. He's
Oh!
still He's under the chin. Oh, my
That's
God.
tight.
He's got it. He's got it.
He's still fighting.
Look like
He's
it's
got
on. Brandon Moreno has done it. Tijuana,
Moreno.
you have a champion. Brandon Moreno is the undisputed UFC flyweight champion.
Wow. Wow.
He did it.
Guys, if you like the ground game, if you like jiu-jitsu, I mean, what a finish. What better finish could you ask for in that situation? Brandon Moreno becoming the first ever Mexican-born UFC champion by that way. Unbelievable moment. You could see after that when he's just walking around the octagon, he's in utter disbelief. Another very emotional fighter, very emotional win. Like I said, after that, how can you not like this guy? There's so many things to like about him. Like he's yet another example of, putting in the hard work and getting the job done. Unbelievable moment for him. That's why he's going to steal my favorite in that flyweight division. I'm definitely a guy that's cheering for Brandon Moreno. Come January 21st, I'm going to be cheering for him yet again. See if he can win that championship belt back from Deiveson Figueiredo. Now, the men's bantamweight division. This is my number one favorite fighter at the moment. Who is ranked, who is relevant. Sugar Show, Sean O'Malley. Has to be no other than Sean O'Malley. A lot of people don't like him either. I'm sticking on the odd side of the fence here. I think a lot of people might disagree with me again. Sean O'Malley, season 1 of the Dana White Contender Series in 2017, he gets the contract. Sean O'Malley starts 4-0 in the UFC until he eventually falls to Marlon Vera. Now, Marlon Chito Vera is on the rise. He's got a lot of steamway, in that bantamweight division. A lot of people think he's going to be the new champ soon. But Sean O'Malley's going to look to change that because Sean O'Malley is bitter about that loss to Marlon Vera. Now, Vera beat him because Sean O'Malley got injured in that fight, in the middle of that fight. But just a few weeks from now, it's at the 5th. Today's October 5th. So on the 22nd of October, Sean O'Malley is taking on the number 1 contender in that bantamweight division in Petr Yan. Guys, this is not a fight you want to miss. If you guys don't know Sean O'Malley already, I believe I talked about him before. Guys, keep an eye on Sean O'Malley. And just don't even think about not watching the card on October 22nd. That's probably the best card I've ever seen, at least in my lifetime, in my UFC fandom. Guys, Sean O'Malley's fighting October 22nd against the number 1 contender. Do not miss him in that bantamweight division clash. Moving on to featherweight here. My favorite fighter in this division has to be the champ, the pound-for-pound king, Alexander Volkanovski. Guys, if you've never seen Alexander Volkanovski fight, check out his highlights. Alexander Volkanovski debuts in 2016 with a knockout win. He continues that by staying undefeated in the UFC, going to 12-0. Guys, that is very, very rare. 12-0 in the UFC. 2019, he beats Max Holloway for the championship. In 2020, he beats Max Holloway again to retain the championship. And that was a very disputed fight. A lot of people think Holloway won. I think I do give the credit to Volkanovski. I think he just did that little bit extra more to retain that belt. And he's still a champ, guys. He's undefeated. After that fight with Holloway, he takes on Brian Ortega in probably one of the greatest fights I've seen in the last 3-4 years. And probably during that fight, he probably had one of the greatest submission escapes ever. Brian Ortega had that fight won, but Alex Volkanovski shows out his heart and survives that submission attempt. Guys, if you haven't watched that fight, check out on YouTube. Brian Ortega versus Alex Volkanovski. You'll see the reason why I love this guy. You'll see this guy's heart. This is a guy you do not want to miss fight. You do not want to miss Alexander Volkanovski fight. And guys, I'm going to say that a lot because these are my favorite guys of the division. But These guys that I'm saying that to, you really don't want to miss them fight. If you're new to the UFC and you have an image in your head on what the UFC is, especially here at Fist First, we promote that action. Guys, you're going to see a lot of action if you tune into these fighters' fights. Now, to move on to a guy that does not know how to not put on a show, moving to this lightweight division, my favorite fighter here is no other than Dustin Poirier. Yet again, I'm probably on the odd side of the fence here. A lot of people do not like Dustin. And this is because Dustin Poirier beat McGregor 2 times last year. A lot of McGregor fans were pissed. And a lot of UFC fans are McGregor fans. Therefore, a lot of UFC fans do not like Dustin Poirier. But guys, guess what? Dustin Poirier beat McGregor fair and square. Get over with it. What's done is done. McGregor lost. It's over. Guys, Dustin Poirier does not know how to not put on a show. He's got a fight of the year contender in 2017. He's got a fight of the year runner-up in 2018. Another fight of the year contender in 2018, 2019, 2020. Dustin Poirier fought Khabib one time. Granted, he lost. This guy knows how to put on a show. He's a fun fighter. And I'm going to trigger some UFC fans here, but seeing him beat McGregor twice was absolutely awesome. That is the icing on the cake. Mark this guy down as my favorite fighter in that lightweight division. One of my favorite fighters overall, Dustin Poirier. Now you guys know how we love here on Fist First to show our Philly love. So moving on to the welterweight division, you already know who it's going to be. It's got to be the Philly boy, Sean Brady. Not only is he a Philly boy, he is an undefeated Philly boy. He's 15-0 as a professional, 5-0 in the UFC. He also competes on Fury Grappling, where he's 2-0. This kid can do it all. Sean Brady, my favorite fighter in that welterweight division. And that's a very tough division, guys. That's a very tough division. Obviously, you have Kamaru Usman. You have Leon Edwards in that division. You had Khamzat in there for a little while. You got McGregor potentially coming in there. You got, Jorge Masvidal. You got Stephen Thompson. You got a lot of these names. That welterweight division is stacked. So my favorite fighter here, Sean Brady, here's the one thing that he has to do. He has to start finishing fights in the UFC if he wants to move up in this division, right? He only has one finish in the UFC. Sean Brady, I want to see you get it done, brother. I want to see you get a knockout, get a submission, get a finish in the UFC, make a statement in that welterweight division. And you know when Sean Brady can do that? October 22nd. Guys, like I said, that October 22nd card is absolutely stacked. And you can watch Sean Brady, the Philly boy, take on Bilal Muhammad in that card. Guys, please, please do not miss October 22nd's pay-per-view. It's only a few weeks away. Moving on here to the middleweight division. I'm probably sitting on the odd side of the fence here as well. But in this middleweight division, it has to go nobody other than the Reaper, Robert Whittaker. And I'll tell you guys why a lot of people probably are going to disagree with me here. And this is a little hypocritical of me. Fist First, we are all about the action here. Robert Whittaker isn't a guy that typically tends to get finishes, right? He wins a lot of fights by decision, but he wins a lot of fights. Made his UFC debut in 2012. Eventually fell to 2-2, but overcame that rough start by winning 9 in a row after that. Now, if he wasn't in this middleweight division, or Israel Adesanya, to say the least, is Robert Whittaker's kryptonite. So to come back to what I was saying before, if Israel Adesanya is not in this division, Robert Whittaker is your champion. Robert Whittaker was your champion in 2017 when he won the belt versus Yoel Romero, which, again, was a fight of the year contender. Whittaker took on Romero again in 2018, another fight of the year contender. So even though Robert Whittaker does not get finishes, he knows how to bring the action. He's a fun guy to watch. Guy that's good at he's really good at what he does. If Israel Adesanya is not in that division, Robert Whittaker is still your champion. And Robert Whittaker is a dominant champion. Now, here's an interesting one for you guys. UFC light heavyweight division. It's a tough one for me, right? You got Glover Teixeira, obviously a UFC legend. You got Yuri Prochazka, who's the champion, who's a fun fighter to watch, has knockout of the year last year. But I'm going to go with an oddball here. I'm going to go somewhere different. I don't want to go with the obvious one here. I'm going Anthony Smith. This is the guy that was down, but not out. This was a guy that debuted in 2013 in the UFC, got submitted in under 2 minutes. Very rough start for him. Didn't return to the UFC until 2016, where he got his first win in the UFC, followed it up with another loss. So Anthony Smith enters into the UFC with a record of 1-2. But he doesn't give up. His nickname's Lionheart. He doesn't give up. This is an inspirational guy. He eventually follows that 1-2 UFC start with some wins. He starts tacking together some popularity, a little bit of rhythm, a little bit of momentum. He eventually goes on to fight Jon Jones. He goes the distance with Jon Jones. Johnny Bag of Bones Jones. He goes the distance with. Granted, he loses that fight via unanimous decision. But currently, Anthony Smith sits as your number 5 contender in that light heavyweight division. And guys, when he's not fighting, he's always engaging with this sport. You guys probably see him on the UFC pre or post-fight shows. Guy loves the sport. I can respect that a lot. And that is the reason why he's going to take it over as my favorite light heavyweight fighter currently. Now to move on to the big boys. And this is one that I think a lot of people are actually going to agree with me. I think I'm on the right side of the fence here with this one. My favorite fighter in the heavyweight division is no other than Tai Bam Bam Tuivasa. Again, how can you not love this guy? He has a similar story to Anthony Smith, right? He starts out really hot in the UFC. Goes 3-0. 2 first-round knockouts in his 3-0 start. But then things take a turn. He starts losing. He loses 3 in a row. Everybody thinks he's done. Everybody thinks he's down. He's out. Probably his UFC contract's probably up in the air. But then guess what happens? Tai Tuivasa turns it around and lands 5 straight victories, all 5 via the knockout. 3 of those 5 knockouts come in round 1. 2 of those 5 knockouts come in the first 2 minutes of the fight. And the biggest one is against Derek Lewis, the fight before he fought Cyril Gane. And guys, I talked about the Cyril Gane fight. That ended Bam Bam's streak here of 5 fights. But guys, he almost knocked. Tai Tuivasa almost knocked out Cyril Gane, who, as I keep predicting, is going to be your heavyweight champion soon. Guys, Tai Tuivasa, the guy that shoe chugs beers or boot chugs beers after every victory, and maybe even after he loses. Dude is a party animal. Dude is tough to not like. Tai Tuivasa, you got it as my favorite heavyweight fighter. So, guys, we had a little bit of an interesting show here. Like I said, unfortunately, there is no UFC fight night. It's a preview on Saturday. So it is going to be a lonely weekend for the UFC fans. But shout out to the Phillies. We got Phillies playoffs this weekend. We got the Birds. As Philly fans, we got enough this weekend to keep us occupied until next weekend's fight night. But guys, check us out on Monday night when we come back here at Fist First. As always, thank you guys for watching. And like I said before, please, guys, do not forget to hit that like, follow, or subscribe button. That is much appreciated here at DSM Media. Guys, keep watching. Peace out.